Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. Today, I want to talk about a very practical career strategy for the 99% of developers out there who will likely never work at a big tech company. Now, if you're on social media, you're probably thinking, don't most developers work at big tech companies, or at least, 20, 30, 40%? It's way less. Most of the developers that you're going to meet, most of the jobs you're going to have are not going to be in big tech. Most of the students that go to Parsity end up going to mid-sized to larger companies. Some go to really big name companies that you've heard of, but they're not what we'd call traditional tech companies like FANG. FANG is the acronym for the largest tech companies in the world, and that acronym is becoming a little outdated as bigger players come up. But when you hear people say FANG, it stands for Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. Sometimes people call it MANG because Facebook is now called Meta. You could probably put Twitter in there or X or a few other companies that might go in and out of the top, 5 or 6 in the world. But that's only 5 or 6 out of hundreds of thousands of companies in the US alone, likely. So there's a ton of companies out there. And the strategies that people use at these top tech companies to get by aren't going to necessarily apply to you. But the problem is, if you're online, you see those strategies listed as like the way to do things. Like, here's how we do things at Google, or here's how we do things at WhatsApp, or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, because you can learn quite a lot from following people that have been in these really high-paced, fast growth startups and extremely, tech-focused companies. But what about the rest of us? So I didn't do that. I feel pretty good about where I've gone so far. I went from a pretty underpaid, mediocre developer to an engineering leader, which is the place where I'm currently at. And I did this through a strategic set of job hops. So this wasn't like just complete accident. I knew what I was doing along the way. I had a plan. I also took some chances. I also think this strategy is practical and one that you can likely use, even if you're at the very, very beginning of your career, and especially if you're at the very, very beginning of your career, because this is the time you want to be intentional with where you're going to go. Because believe it or not, getting the first job is tough, but it's the shortest part of your career. If you're 20, 30, 40, 50, think about this. Let's say you're like older. Let's say you're 50. You get your first developer job. You're going to retire around 65, maybe 70 with the way things are looking in the US, so you can plan to work for at least 15 years, even if you're in your 50s. That is a hell of a lot of time. If you're in your 30s, that leaves you almost 40 years. If you're in your 40s, leaves you about 30 years. That's a ton of time to work. So if you get into this profession and it takes you a year to get in, that still leaves you decades worth of time to, accelerate your career. So you need to think about, where do you really want to go here? I mean, getting the first job, that's great. That's goal number one, right? But what about after that? So I love to code, and I also like to help people reach their goals. It's one of the reasons why I own Parsity. By the way, if you want to start learning to code and start your journey, then you can join me at parsity.io, and you can begin working with us there. I'd say developers are generally obsessed with salary, getting to senior levels, owning their own companies. I think this is pretty good overall. In fact, I think that this desire for more is what drives developers to innovate, take on increasingly more difficult tasks, and automate ruthlessly. We're rewarded for doing these things well. And people all the time talk about the outrageous salaries in tech. And yes, it is true. It can be. It can also be that you are very underpaid, which was my story when I first started out. Unfortunately, a lot of you out there probably think the only way to get more money or power or the respect that you want is to study leap code for 8 hours a day and go down this FANG route where you're working for one of these top 5 or 6 companies out there. And you think that's it. Or worse, maybe you're just putting in longer and longer hours and you want to get infinitely better at writing code. Wrong, right? There is a limit to return on your technical ability. When you're first learning, that is the first thing you got to do, though. Get the technical ability, get that solid foundation. But what I want to tell you is how I climbed this engineering ladder by basically chasing uncomfortableness. So I'm going to use the analogy of a fish. So this is my big fish, small pond strategy. Every big fish was a small fish at some point. The harsh truth is that staying where you are comfortable is going to limit your progress. I've seen it happen way too often, and I nearly fell into this trap myself. And I get it. Once you get hired, it's tempting to just coast. Interviews are stressful. You might really like your team, and you might really value work-life balance. And you also probably believe the myth of stability. I went to a very stable Fortune 100 company and was laid off along with like 40 people out of the blue. Stability doesn't exist. It's a myth. It never really existed in the first place. It didn't exist when our parents were doing work. It didn't exist in the generation before that. And I also want to give you a disclaimer to the advice that I'm about to talk about here. This worked for me, and this worked for other engineering leaders who I've spoken with. We wanted more money, we wanted more status, and we wanted more influence. Is this right? Is this wrong? I'm not here to judge these desires or say what you should want. You should want what you want. But if you want these things, you may want to consider doing the strategy that I'm going to outline here. So we chased these leadership opportunities because we found them exciting and fulfilling. I genuinely like working with people. If I didn't, I'd probably be a terrible leader. And if you go on LinkedIn and you look at my recommendations, you can see that people generally don't hate me too much, right? People give me recommendations. I give people recommendations. I enjoy the people aspect of being in a technology team. I also enjoy writing code. So the people aspect is what helped me out a lot in my career, because a lot of people only want to write code, and there's nothing at all wrong with this. But if you want to go down the leadership route, I'm going to show you how. Let's dive in. Step one is get to medium-sized fish. You're going to have to leave that first job before you get too good, or else you risk becoming really good at only working on that team and that particular code base. Also, you probably didn't negotiate your salary. And even if you got promoted there, it's not going to give you the kind of boost that switching companies will. Sorry, Charlie. You're going to have to leave. I did, at least. In my first job, I barely knew JS. I had to also learn C#, SQL, AngularJS just to be productive. It took me about 2 years to feel useful. The first 6 months, and really the first year, I thought I was going to get fired like every day, pretty much. I made some serious blunders, but overall I did well. In the time, I met a lot of awesome people. I got mentorship, encouragement. I had opportunities to grow, and then I left. No hard feelings at all. I mean, I just knew that I was underpaid. And if I wanted a massive jump in salary and to keep up with modern web development, I knew I had to make a move. And I was pretty naive at this stage. I could build stuff. I knew how to use Git. I was what I thought was a mid-level developer. At least I thought I was. And so I went on the job hunt. I passed the interview for a very small startup in San Francisco. Then I got demoted, which leads me to step two. Become a small, little lonely fish. This is what I call the Finding Nemo stage. You're going to really doubt yourself in this move. You left what you thought was stability to join the unknown. You can't just go anywhere, though. This next move that you take needs to either, one, increase your salary, or two, level you up by working with better engineers. Ideally, it does both. But if you're going to optimize for one thing, always optimize for working with better engineers. They're going to teach you so much more and help you out further down the line. So if possible, leave for number two, rather than just the salary alone. If you go to somewhere where the salary is really high, but you're learning even less, or it's too cushy, you're not going to grow. And when you find yourself on the job market again, it's going to be really difficult for you at that point. So optimize for learning at this early stage in your career. And so how do you know when it's time to leave? Once you feel too comfortable, when the job becomes a little mundane and it's thoughtless and you're not really learning, or you're not learning anything of value. Are you still using like AngularJS in 2024? It's time to move on. Are you using jQuery in 2024? It's time to move on. So I joined a fast-paced startup. I was one of the founding engineers, and there was like zero onboarding. So I get there, my first day, they give me a laptop, an assignment, and they pair me with a contractor. Boom, I'm in it. The code base was Rails, Ember.js. The other developer was a super senior. He was a regular contributor in the Ember community. And the first day, someone made a joke about Dijkstra. And if you don't know what that means, don't worry, look it up. Dijkstra. It's a graphing algorithm made by a guy of the same name. Someone mentioned Clojure. A bug that involved hoisting happened. I was so far in over my head that my stomach like literally turned. I was feeling sick. Like, how long could I possibly last here? The next 10 months were rough. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I got called out twice for my lack of performance, which was one of the first times in life. I'm like a people pleaser. I'm always trying to be the gold star person. And here I was the worst. And I've spoken about that in a previous podcast. You can check out what it's like to be the worst developer on a team. I was like an anxious wreck during my time here. I'd also just bought a house, had a daughter. So pretty rough time in general to go through this. But I also learned about unit testing, ownership, writing really good software. I learned way more in 10 months here than I learned in the previous 2 years. Then I knew it was time to leave again. It was too stressful. I was not doing well. This company felt unstable. It's actually doing really well now, and I'm really happy to see it going in a positive direction. I like the CEO who I worked with. I like the people that were involved in it. I'm really glad to see them doing well, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity. But had to leave. Had to kick rocks, no hard feelings. Step 3, I joined a new pond as a medium-sized fish. So now I went from this little tiny tadpole swimming around. Then I went to the Finding Nemo stage. Now I'm kind of like, okay, you know what? I know what I'm doing now. I feel a little bit better about myself. I'm basically like a mid-level, mid-sized, medium-sized fish. I'm a real fish now. So at this point, you should understand where your technical gaps are, and then you should seek out a place where you can likely fill them in. So this next hop is less about money and more about upward mobility. Does the new organization have room for you to grow and get promoted? And you need to make your intentions known when you get the offer. So when they say, okay, we want to hire you, say, great, I'm coming on here and I want to get to senior level in the next 6 to 12 months. Is that a possibility if my performance shows that I'm at that level? And they should say, yeah, there's definitely room for you to grow into senior here. That should be one of the things you're optimizing for at this stage. Every new job is a chance to reinvent yourself. Remember that. Now you're a seasoned, respectable developer. Don't prove them wrong. Same thing goes for when you get that first job. I mean, like, no one knows who you are, right? They don't know that you used to be a French fry chef or a security guard or work in banking or whatever you were doing. No one really cares either. You don't have to let them know that information. I'm all about inventing myself and reinventing myself all the time. I went from pretty much like a criminal lifestyle into software developer and now manager, and people look at me like just some boring old dude. And I like that. I mean, I don't really want people to look at me as anything other than that. So if you fake it long enough, you'll become the thing that you're faking. You just will. I faked it long enough to become like a street guy. And then I faked it long enough to become what I am now, which is a software nerd guy. So when you're at this new job, every single job hop, another chance to reinvent yourself. No one has to know that you did poorly at the last place. You come in there and you come on strong. So I worked on enterprise software. I joined a small startup. Now it was time for this mid-sized startup. And this is the company where I knew now it's time for me to get that promotion. By now, my salary had basically doubled from the first place that I was at. And I also wanted the senior title. I knew that was important. Senior is the place where you will spend most of your career as a developer. I know it's daunting. You think, I just want to get that first job. But then you realize when you get that first job that there's a long, long road. Remember, decades is likely what you have in front of you. So you need to get that senior title, not too fast, but also not too slow. You want to be there because that's when opportunities open up, more money opens up, and leadership opportunities open up. So the 10-person startup taught me grit. It taught me how to be autonomous as a developer. And I took that attitude here and I looked for opportunities where I could show I could hang out with the big dogs, right? I volunteered for on-call. I took on the features with a tight deadline. I wrote down questions to ask during meetings. I had confidence finally, and I failed a lot. I blew up production a few times. I failed on a really high priority task. And then I also got promoted because between these failures, I also did some cool stuff. I reduced the latency on a query by 50%. This was a very complicated query to a database using Elasticsearch. I saved money and I improved the user experience for a popular feature. I fixed a critical bug after an all-nighter. I onboarded other developers. And then 2 years later, again, I left. Now I'm thinking, am I a big fish? Step 4, make way. Big fish coming through. So at this point, you have like two choices. You can stay and climb the career ladder, especially if your focus is on being technical, staff or principal level, and the team is really, really good. If you're at a really good company, like I was at this previous one, I might have made a good choice by staying. I did not stay because I realized there was an opportunity somewhere else. And I thought I can stay here and climb this ladder if I want to get really, really technical, or maybe I could skip a few, by moving to an easier company. And I chose that route. Either way, you're going to have to make this decision at some point. Do you want to stay and get really, really technical with a really great team? Or do you want to move down, like go to a company that's less tech focused, where you can kind of be more impressive because you have skills that you got from a place that taught you a lot about tech? I chose option 2. So at this point, I was slightly above average at the last startup. I was good enough to get promoted, but if I stayed there and tried to climb the engineering ladder, I was basically sure I was going to either burn out or I just wasn't going to be able to hang with some of these people that were next in line. I thought, I'm so far down the line at this point, I don't know if there's much room to grow at where I'm currently at. Again, no hard feelings at all. I love that team and I love the coworkers there. I just saw an opportunity with a large company and a fairly young developer team. I thought this is going to be my chance. I took it and I was not disappointed. The new team was just starting to write React. They lacked some fundamental processes, which I was really familiar with. And I was no longer just this slightly above average developer. I was like an authority on this team. And I took some risks there to get promoted quickly. So I implemented PR processes. I created test suites, libraries. I organized events. I spoke to audiences outside of engineering. I made some really big mistakes too. I thought I might still be fired a couple times. And I'm still learning a lot. But I knew that I had to take on tasks that had a lot of leverage, putting in efforts that were going to show me as a leader within the team. I couldn't just sit there and get a few things done. I'm like, okay, if I'm here, I need to really make a name for myself. How do I do that? Taking on high leverage tasks, taking on processes, not writing code so much anymore, but thinking, what are the processes which are going to speed up the delivery of code for the team? What about other people in the company? What does the marketing team want? What does the product team want? What do the CEOs and other people want? What do they want out of the code that we write? I'm starting to think on a business level and think, okay, well, what can we do to make them happier? Taking on those things and project planning is what ultimately got me in the running to be a manager. So at this point, in about 3 years, I've gone from senior and then I got promoted to staff and then finally engineering manager because I was just chasing this uncomfortable experience at every single step. As soon as I got comfortable, I left. And I've kind of been following that pattern for the last almost 10 years now. And it's worked out pretty well for me. And most people that I speak to, that's generally the way they structure their career as well. Again, I don't want to say that there's anything wrong with being comfortable or staying in a job for too long. I just know that if you want to grow and you want to grow at a faster pace than other people, you're going to have to be uncomfortable. I knew it at the first job. I knew it at the second and third and the fourth on the contracts I worked in between. When I spoke in public for the first time, when I first did this podcast, I just knew that this is that piece where you're growing and it's a weird, uncomfortable stage. You can call me crazy. You can call me whatever. I don't really like sports. I don't want to go hiking. I don't want to be on a fishing boat. I like the game of work and managing a team. I'm naive enough to think that I can make a difference at a company, and so I play this game for fun and for profit, and it works for me. I hope you take whatever you find useful from this story and apply it to your own journey if that's your thing. This has worked for me. I like it. I like to work. I'm not some workaholic hustle culture guy. I just don't have a lot of other hobbies outside of coding and writing. So these lend themselves really well to playing this particular corporate game. And maybe you think, oh, you're a corporate shill or you need to have hobbies. And I'm like, maybe you're right. I don't know. You should do ultimately what works for you. And if you're ready to start your journey as a small little fish, then join me at parsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, join dev30.xyz. By the way, we have an amazing guarantee at Parsity that I'm going to make public soon, that guaranteed job placement within 6 months of graduating, as long as you follow the steps and do the stuff we say. It's too good to be true type of offer. In fact, we could have been making this offer a long time ago because we see that students that do what we say and graduate and do the work, they just get hired. So if you're ready to finally do that, join me at parsity.io. Always happy to chat with you. Until next time, see you later. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about becoming a software engineer with us, then check out parsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, then jump into our dev30.xyz program, which is 30 days of working on your mindset, habits, and JavaScript skills. Totally worth it. See you next week.